Our third lesson on complex numbers. Now you're going to actually do some addition, subtraction, and multiplication with them. And when we do that, one of the things you have to treat I as the imaginary number is you treat it like a variable here. And so let me show you how to deal with this. Well, first of all, here's an expression where we're adding 5 plus 2i plus 4 minus 3i. All right, everything here, and when I look at this, I have pluses and minuses. So I can reorder this. I can remove the parentheses right now because this is a plus in between the two. So when I do that, I'm going to change this problem. And I'm going to put the rational numbers together. And then I'm going to put the irrational or the imaginary numbers together, not irrational, the imaginary. So if I mentally take out these parentheses signs, so I'm just going to like mentally going to ignore these things because everything here, I got a plus sign in the middle, which means I can just kind of ignore that. So what does this equal then? Well, I'm going to put rational numbers first. So I'm going to say 5 plus 4. So mentally I rearrange it and say it's 5 plus 4. And then I'm going to put the imaginary number second, plus 2i minus 3i. So now I'm going to treat 5 plus 4, that I know is 9. And now I have 2 times the imaginary minus 3 times the imaginary. Well, when I do that, treat I like a variable, and that's going to then be 2 minus 3 is negative 1, so this is like a minus I. So my final answer is 9 minus I. Now we want to, when we add and subtract these things, we actually want an answer that's in what we call A plus BI form. Okay, A plus BI form. So let me write that out for you. And what that actually is, when you say A plus BI form, that means that the real number is A and B is where the imaginary number is. Real number first, imaginary second. Okay, so let's look at the next thing. I have 6i minus 2 minus I, and that 2 minus I is in parentheses. On the first one, I could ignore the parentheses because I was adding the things, but here I can't. So I have to remember that this, I'm going to distribute this negative to both the 2 and to the I. So when I rewrite this problem now, I'm going to rewrite it, and I have 6i, which I'll keep. So then it's going to be distributing the minus is minus 2, and distribute minus to the minus I becomes a plus I. Next, what do I look for? I look for like terms. Well, I have a negative 2, and since I want to write the real number first, that's going to be written down first as I rearrange. And now I have 6i plus I. Well, if I treat I like a variable, 6 of 1 plus 1 of one more, then gives me plus 7i. And I would be done with this at this point because now I have one real number and I have one imaginary number. So when you're dealing with addition and subtraction, you treat I like a variable, like it's an X and an N or an A, a B, C, something like that, and you can work with it when you're adding and subtracting that way, like you've always done with variables. Multiplying them. Okay, let's take a look. I have negative 5i times 3i. So what do I do here? Well, I will work with my real numbers first. I have a negative 5 and a positive 3. So negative 5 times positive 3, that's negative 15. And then I have I times I. Well, that's I squared. If you wrote down from the first lesson, you have I squared, I cubed, I to the fourth. I squared we know to equal negative 1. I squared. That equals, oops, negative 1. So now I'm going to change this. This is in like negative 15 times negative 1. And negative 15 times negative 1 is positive 15. So my final answer here is positive 15. Moving to a second example where we're multiplying. Negative 2i times 6 minus 2i. So on this one, I will be distributing. I'm going to be distributing the 2i to the 6 and the 2i to the minus 2i. And then we'll see if we have like terms and what we can do, what we can simplify and make easier. Negative 2 times 6 is negative 12. So I have negative 12 and I have an I. Then I have negative 2i times negative 2i. Well, negative 2 times negative 2 plus 4. And I times I squared. Okay. Now, I squared, again, just to review, is also the same as negative 1. So I'm going to change that. So I have a negative 12i plus 4, And what do we say I squared is? I squared is the same as negative 1. So 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. So this is I squared plus negative 4. Whoops. Now I have not written this in ABI form, so I am going to have to rewrite it. And I will rewrite it like this, that I have negative 4 minus 12i. I always want my real number written first, imaginary number written second. All right, next step. One last example. And you'll take a look at this and see, yes, it's a binomial times a binomial. Even with imaginary numbers, we can have this. So we will now do our distributing. And I'm going to do 3 times 6 first. And so 3 times 6 is 18. And 3 times I, so plus 3i. And then I go underneath, negative 4 times 6. Hello. So now I have a negative 24i. And then negative 4i times positive I. So that means I have a negative 4i squared. Let's go back through our terms looking for like terms. Well, right now this is the only real number I have is positive 18. But I have a 3i minus 24i, so I'll combine those like terms. 3i minus 24i, those are like terms. So 3 plus negative 24 is negative 21i. So I have 18 minus 21i. Now I have minus 4i squared. So again, I squared is negative 1. So negative 4 times negative 1 is plus 4. Now I still have two real numbers, 18 and a plus 4, so I have 22 minus 21i. 22 minus 21i. And now I have everything simplified that I can, and I have my real number first, followed by my imaginary number. And that is basically it for when we're adding, subtracting, and multiplying with the imaginary number. So what do I want you to do? I want you to do this for practice. Page 466, numbers 19 through 32. Please show your work, check your answers, and then turn it in to me. All right, let me know how I can help you with this one while you're working.